This is Outspoken live episode number 159. Hope you had a wonderful, restful weekend. But I have to say this afternoon, go the farmers. Have you seen these incredible scenes on Whitehall today as the tractors came to town ahead of the government's inheritance tax vote this afternoon? And those scenes were enough to make Katie Hopkins emotional.
And it's very emotional. It's very emotional, especially for me. You know, not to make it about me, but big men in big tractors being big patriots, it's enough to set me off.
And look, Katie received a hero's welcome at Whitehall today. But do you know that lefties tried to cancel her major London event at the weekend? I'm going to show you what happened later in the show. But first, a dramatic escalation, and this is genuinely dramatic. I'm not exaggerating even slightly. In this growing war between the surging Reform UK and the dying Conservative Party, with Reform's Chairman Zia Yusuf taking the bold step of threatening to imprison former Prime Minister Boris Johnson and ex-Health Secretary Matt Hancock for COVID crimes. And by the way, Nigel Farage isn't having any of this discussion about doing a deal with Boris or the Tories either.
And they are now going to become a party of history, sir, because we are going to replace them.
So in my digest next, I'll outline why the legacy media continues to push Farage into doing a deal with the Tories. And then my special guest, Alex Phillips, joins for her unparalleled analysis. Also coming up on the show today, after Donald Trump receives rapturous applause at the Superbowl as Taylor Swift is booed, can woke now officially be declared dead? And another Labour Party suspension as a result of these WhatsApp group exchanges. We'll bring you all the latest. Then in the Uncancelled After Show, which is on Substack, of course, Meghan Markle makes the Invictus Games all about me. But the cracks with Prince Harry show. We're going to team up with the Royal News Network for all the best coverage you won't get from the MSM from the events in Vancouver. Sign up at www.outspoken.live. And of course, the first Union Jackass Greatest Britain of the Week returns near the end of the show. Let me take you through today's nominees. Andrew Gwynn, the aforementioned Labour MP for those horrible posts and WhatsApp messages. Taylor Swift, also aforementioned after she was booed at the Super Bowl thanks to her woke ideology. And nominee 3, the protesters of Katie Hopkins for trying to cancel her event. You make the decisions. You are the judge. Simply enter the live chat, cast your vote. Let me know why. By the way, I love hearing from you throughout the show, and I'll read out some of your best contributions at the end. Plus, reveal today's Greatest Britain as well. But now, let's go. Whoa, that escalated quickly. Just as the MSM launched a predictable campaign to force a surging Reform UK to fold and do a deal with the Conservative Party, the ultimate riposte from the insurgents' increasingly confident, some would say arrogant, not me, but some would say arrogant Chairman Zia Yusuf. He wants to throw Boris Johnson and Matt Hancock in jail. So this is Trumpian fighting talk, folks, and let me take you through it. In light of the weekend's fake news, Zia Yusuf posted on X, where else, far from wishing to work with Boris Johnson, a Reform government will commission a proper COVID inquiry. It will leave no stone unturned to seek justice for victims and their families. It is possible the CPS will then have sufficient evidence to prosecute Johnson and Hancock for misconduct in public office and gross negligence manslaughter. Between the 17th of March and 25th of April 2020, Johnson released circa 25,000 hospital patients into care homes, the majority without being tested for COVID. Johnson and Hancock sent large numbers of untested people from hospitals into environments most concentrated with the most vulnerable to the disease. Tens of thousands of elderly British care home residents died as a result of that decision. This is a catastrophe inflicted on the British people that will be investigated without fear or favour. So, that escalated, right, folks? This is like how Trump used to talk about Hillary Clinton. And if Zia Yusuf is wanting to prove to all of us that there will be no deal with the Conservatives, even if Boris Johnson were to return as leader, okay, I think we're now convinced. I would say, though, that such a call does risk splitting the right even more when Boris does remain a popular figure in some quarters for his delivery of Brexit. The Conservative Post, for example, which has recently really started to embrace reform, they warned, editor's note, Zia Yusuf needs to wind his neck in about Boris Johnson. Because of Boris's groundwork, the UK became the fastest growing G7 nation, built a £1 trillion tech sector, one of only 3 in the world with the US and China, overtook New York as the global fintech powerhouse and became the second biggest exporter of services worldwide. Language Zia should understand. Take the fight to Labour, Zia, and leave Boris alone. You're not doing reform, no for any favours. Or actually, she said you're doing reform, no favours, but same point. Now, I don't think, tell me if I'm wrong, seriously tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think many of us on the right genuinely want to see Boris behind bars, right? Surely we leave that type of lawfare to the left. But Nigel did make it clear overnight that no deal is on the cards.
If you read your Sunday newspapers, you'll see there's much talk of me doing deals with the Conservative Party. Many years ago, sir, they were a very, very successful political organisation, but sadly, they betrayed the country with open-door immigration, with increased taxes, with not delivering Brexit, and they are now going to become a party of history, sir, because we are going to replace them.
And there is a reason. There is a real reason for that sort of confidence from Nigel. Just as Reform membership surges to 200,000, the MSM all of a sudden wants to talk up a deal with the Tories. So we've had The Spectator and the Sunday Times at it in recent days, and of course the Mail, who the party's deputy leader Richard Tice reckons should, quote, apologise for fake news. But there is one issue that continues to divide Reform UK, or should I say one man, or actually maybe 2 men. A certain political prisoner, Tommy Robinson, and the richest bloke in the world, Elon Musk. Because in a new Bombshell interview with the Daily Telegraph, Rupert Lowe, a very popular Reform MP, has made it clear he doesn't sign up to the Farage doctrine on this issue.
Elon Musk thinks you should be the leader of Reform instead of Nigel Farage.
No, that's not what he said. So what he's been, and I'm very honoured and privileged that he's, I think he is the world's most prominent and successful entrepreneur, for which I hugely admire him. He does follow what we're doing on Twitter, and that to me is a huge honour. I think he follows us now, which is great.
Yeah.
He has 215 million people following him. I only have 271,000 people following me, so I'm a minnow in Twitter terms compared with him.
Okay.
But when one of my lot asked him, did he think I should be? He didn't say I should or shouldn't. What he said was he enjoyed what we were putting on Twitter. That's different.
Okay.
Nigel's the leader of Reform.
But he thinks Nigel shouldn't be the leader of Reform, and he likes you.
I don't know where that came from. I mean, he did say that, but you're linking the two and probably stitching 2 ends to meet in the middle. I don't think he actually said, I don't know him. I've never spoken to Elon Musk.
Yeah. But he did say he thought Nigel should not be the leader. How awkward a moment was that for Reform?
Well, I put out a statement, that day, and I put out a statement supporting Nigel. I put out a statement supporting what Tommy Robinson had done on these wretched grooming gangs. He was in the same statement. You've probably seen it.
Yeah.
Very carefully worded. I think he's not given the credit he deserves for what he's done on this vile
Tommy Robinson
stain on our.
Now you saw there absolute shock and horror from the Telegraph dude, and you'll see now that he was desperate to get Rupert to backpedal and say something negative about Tommy, which Rupert would not do.
We'll come on to the grooming gangs.
I'm absolutely irritated beyond belief about it.
We'll come on to that. You've mentioned Tommy Robinson. Regardless of whether you agree with his position on grooming gangs, is it smart politics for you to in any way sort of stand alongside him or give him credit for anything?
I'm not standing alongside him, and I've said consistently, I was on Michelle Dewberry on GB News on Monday.
But you said he's not being given credit.
Render unto Tommy Robinson what is Tommy Robinson's, and render unto Reform what is Reform's. But that doesn't mean to say you don't give credit to people who've actually done good work on something. Now, I don't know what Tommy Robinson's done.
But he's a vile man, isn't he?
Hang on. I've said he's not right for Reform. He himself says he's not right for Reform. So you can try and make as much mischief as you want, but the fact of the matter is, we aren't going to come together. But that doesn't mean to say you don't give people credit for what they've done well.
A fascinating insight there into how the MSM works. He's a terrible man, isn't he? He's a vile man, isn't he? But also this very interesting game playing going on both on the right and specifically within Reform UK. Now, Alex Phillips is today's outsider. And Alex, so great to have you. I have to kick off by congratulating you for this incredible piece of work that you have done with the New Culture Forum, new Substack in Today from Patrick O'Flynn, who describes it as by far the most important documentary you will watch this year. It is utterly brilliant. Can you just explain to everyone what it is?
Right, yeah, no, I'm delighted to actually, and all credit to the New Culture Forum. They were the people who came to me and said, look, we've seen you be outspoken about this online. We've seen clips of you go viral talking about women's safety in relation to immigration. And it's actually become a much larger conversation now. I mean, I see it being discussed a lot more on X than I ever used to. And they said, would you fancy making a documentary on this? And I said, absolutely. And so together we did lots of research. They are brilliant researchers. They are tireless and fearless. And then we got some brilliant interviewees. We made sure we got people especially who could talk about things from a Muslim perspective. And it was important to get apostates, essentially, ex-Muslims, because you wouldn't really have many current Muslims or believing Muslims wanting to, turn around and say, well, actually, culturally, there could be a connection here between men coming from Islamic countries and the treatment and harassment of women, particularly Western women. And we actually dove straight into all of the facts, and they're so difficult to get. The UK does not record, until very recently, it never recorded or says it hasn't recorded crime statistics by nationality. Most other European nations do. So that's where we started. We looked at statistics in Denmark, in Sweden, in Germany, in the Netherlands, in France. In all of these countries, the trend was undeniable. Rapes had gone up significantly. Sexual assaults had gone up significantly. The levels of immigration had gone up significantly, but critically, where they record that data, we knew we could find out who was committing those crimes. And in all of those countries, the proportion by which sexual assaults and rapes were being committed by men for Middle Eastern and North African countries was to a factor of 3. To a factor of 4. We're talking in some cases about 50% plus of rapes in a country being carried out by men not even born there, which when you then look at that per capita, in terms of how the percentage of the population, you can see that we have a problem here. Now, just before we went to edit, we had actually were in the process of scripting, had finished all our interviews. All of a sudden, the Telegraph had managed to collate data from people who are incarcerated. And that is where we can find statistics on nationality and nature of crime. And when they published that data, what we found out was in the United Kingdom, from the only data we had, which was essentially from last year alone, we haven't got historic data. But what we knew from that is actually foreign nationals were 3 times more likely to rape and sexually assault women than the native-born population. That is enormous. And so it was a great privilege to be able to make this documentary. Everything has the receipts. We made sure it was data-driven. We didn't want anyone turning around and going, you're a racist, you're an Islamophobe, you're a xenophobe. It's not about that. This is about reality and what is going on. And if you import a lot of men from countries where culturally women are fair game if they reveal skin, women should have chaperones, these men are used to polygamy, women are seen in, in some parts of Islam, depending on people's, varied belief systems within that religion, women are almost seen as no better than animals. When you bring men in from cultures with those beliefs and put them into a nation with completely different attitudes towards women, and actually in a nation that hypersexualizes women and encourages women to be quite permissive and outlandish with their sexual behavior, and you throw on top of that the influence of pornography. I mean, when these men are coming over from Iraq and Afghanistan, what on earth do you think goes through their head when they read about characters like Lily Phillips, all these women now who are trying to have sex with 100 or 1,000 men in 24 hours? You mix all of this up into a cocktail, and what do you think the result is going to be? Well, we've got the statistics, and you know what? I think what we have found out is the tip of the iceberg, because what we also know is this is data from crimes where people have been convicted. A lot of women don't report rapes. A lot of women don't report sexual harassment. They don't report being followed down the street. They don't report to the police when men are getting into their personal zone. They're sort of aggressively pursuing them and trying to chat them up. Those things don't get recorded as data. And so actually, if we were to be able to measure that, I think the results would be even more terrifying. I really hope and pray that this documentary will stay on record, that it will continue to be shared and watched, that it will grow and the audience will get bigger. Of course, I'm not expecting anyone from the mainstream media to knock on my door anytime soon and want to discuss it. That has been the status quo for a long time. We're not allowed to. It's too dangerous. But actually, it's dangerous not to. Because at the end of the day, the safety of women, and particularly little girls, we're talking about teenagers here. I'm 41. I can hold my own by and large. But 13, 14, 15-year-old girls, they tend to be a target. Are they not more important than not offending certain men from certain communities? And it's also worth pointing out as well, and we talk about this in the documentary, it's not just about white girls. This affects Muslim girls as well. We know about honor killings. We know about FGM. Brutal, medieval, horrific, animalistic practices that we've now imported here. So we need to get real and actually have a conversation about what we think is more important: cultural relativism and morality that is, one size, not one size fits all, but, bespoke to wherever you might be from and while they do things differently in that country, and actually what we believe as a society is right. And any society that doesn't protect its daughters is frankly not civilized, is backwards, it's evil. And we should have no time for that in this country. A society that does not protect its vulnerable, its women and its girls, is not a place anyone should want to live.
Oh my goodness. Absolutely. Amen. And you know what? Two thoughts I have. The first, the New Culture Forum says this is one of the most important videos we've made. And they have done so much important work. So that says a lot. And secondly, Alex, just thinking how incredible that since you have gone independent, you are now able to do this breadth of work, make a real difference that you just would not be able to if you were still constrained and tied into the mainstream media. So I'm so proud of you. This is incredible. I watched it yesterday.
We can remember one particular channel that used to say to me, can you stop banging on about that women's stuff?
Yeah.
I was told not to do it anymore.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I left that channel. And now look.
I do remember that. I do remember that, actually, whereas I was saying, no, go. It was incredible. Okay, Alex, is it really sensible? And look, we're pretty much both on the Reform UK train, right? Is it really sensible to start talking about locking up Boris Johnson for COVID crimes?
Well, you know, there's many things that one might want to lock Boris Johnson up for. Is it sensible? No. Is it headline grabbing? Yes. Is it sort of the nature of politics now that people say these outlandish things? Perhaps. But, you know, there's actually far worse things in many respects that Boris Johnson did. Well, no, I did proportionally. Maybe there isn't. But I think to some degree, when it comes to COVID, I mean, locking the society down for over a year and a half, and I'd love to know, the COVID inquiry is not going to look into this, but I would love to know the ramifications of that in terms of the mental health of children who missed education, people who commit suicide because suddenly they lost their businesses. The fact that we've got all these economic ramifications now, society is still massively struggling as a result of those policies. But I do think by and large Boris Johnson's instinct was right, and everyone was scrambling about not really knowing what they were doing. And so the idea of throwing Boris Johnson in particular in prison for that seems rather outlandish and not circumspect. But I would say this: the Conservative Party are not to be underestimated. We should not look back on them with rose-tinted glasses and go, oh, well, we should try and save them. Oh, well, you know, really what should happen is Reform UK and the Conservative Party should do a deal. They need to be finished. If people knew some of the things that I knew, I mean, I remember when Nigel Farage stood down at Brexit Party candidates in 2019 in the Boris Johnson snap election and made that deal with Boris, because he was told on one side, he was told by the Conservatives, hey, if you don't do this, then you could end up with Jeremy Corbyn as Prime Minister, and then Brexit will be dead in the water. And Nigel knew what was the most important thing, not his own party, but the project, the country, Brexit. But there were other things going on that meant he had to stand down all of those candidates. The Conservative Party had set up an anti-reform, an anti-Brexit party unit, like they now have an anti-reform unit. And what this unit did, it wasn't just digging around to try and find peccadillos and social media posts and all of that nonsense. They were actively trying to bribe people, donors and candidates. They had a list called Men and Measures. I know this for a fact. And on that list, they had a number of people that they're going to offer, defect to us or don't stand, and they were going to offer jobs in this particular industry, or, we're going to not investigate this. We won't reveal this to the newspaper. They were essentially blackmailing. And I remember one day when they printed the names and addresses of a load of Reform UK candidates in the Daily Mail, basically saying these people are a threat to the country because if they stand, a Conservative won't win the seats. Brexit will be lost. Jeremy Corbyn will be Prime Minister. That's the sort of crap that dictators do. That's the sort of thing I'd expect from Erdogan in Turkey, trying to frame and bully and intimidate another party's candidates through its sort of owned media, if you will. And like I said, when I actually reported the Conservative Party, get this, I reported the Conservative Party to the Met Police, because using your position as the government and offering people peerages or particular jobs if they didn't stand as a candidate, frankly, is against the law. Of course, the Met Police didn't even respond to me. I was on Question Time. People can go back on YouTube and look this up. At the same time as James Cleverly, who at that point was Conservative Party chairman. And I brought this up. And I said to him, what is under the Christmas tree this year? Is it a peerage or is it a punishment? I mean, the Conservatives don't play nice. They're riddled with blackmail and factions and cover-ups. I know all sorts of things about people in the Conservative Party that if they came to light would destroy them. They're one of the filthiest, nastiest, most unpleasant organisations. No way should we be looking to hold their hands and help them out of the dustbin of history. They deserve to be written off. And I wouldn't trust them as far as I could throw them. And that has to include, I'm afraid, Boris Johnson, as beloved as people think he is. He was presiding over the Conservative Party when this blackmailing was taking place.
Fighting talk. I love it. I do think that Boris's time in frontline politics is over. And I used to believe quite strongly that there would be time for a Boris comeback. I don't think Zia is right to talk about locking him up, though. I just don't think dividing the right in that way is good. Alex, I know you're very much not about focusing in on the minutiae of this issue, but can I just ask you about the Daily Telegraph interview with Rupert Lowe? Because it was a change in language. It's bold, the way that he's talking about Tommy Robinson, right? And it is counter to what Mr. Farage is doing.
Right. I mean, first of all, can we just point out the sort of a peculiar setup of Rupert doing the biggest man spread I've ever seen on those benches, and Gordon Rayner crossing his legs like he's been castrated. I mean, just such a funny juxtaposition. I was watching it like, oh my goodness. Also, you know, I love the Telegraph. I used to write for the Telegraph from time to time. And I thought Gordon Rayner's line of questioning where he was trying to state as fact, Tommy Robinson's vile, isn't he? He's awful, isn't he? He's disgusting, isn't he? I was like, oh my God, I wish Rupert Lowe had turned it around and said, why? Why do you think he's vile? And challenge that. There you go. Look at that. Look at that. You could actually fit Gordon Rayner's legs inside that gaping Rupert Lowe's thighs. It's amazing. I love Rupert Lowe. The man is a G. He's so class. He's such a class act. I've always loved him with Brexit Party MEPs. He's just brilliant. And he's so honourable. And the thing is, look, Nigel's been in the game a long time. And he knows that if Rupert Lowe turns around and says, do you know what? Tommy Robinson's done some good things. The media won't bother talking about it. He can get away with it. Like I actually, by and large, have managed to get away with saying the same thing. If Nigel said it, it's the end. It would be every headline everywhere. They were like lemmings. They follow each other. They do exactly what everyone else does, which is also, you know, I think the Telegraph's line of questioning on this is just unimaginative. The conversation's being had. Are we still going to be asking the same bloody question in 6 months' time? Do you like Tommy Robinson? It's not even a thing. It's an invented thing. Tommy Robinson's in prison, so no one can go to him and say, oh, by the way, have you been begging reform to stand as an MP? He hasn't. So this is all confected, and it's unimaginative that somebody who's a brilliant political journalist should feel the need to go down that route and ask those questions when there are so many more interesting things to talk about. But Rupert can get away with what Rupert said and done without anyone batting an eyelid. But, you know, Nigel just has to sort of sneeze, and it sounds like the word Tommy, and he would be absolutely castigated for it. And Nigel knows this. So Nigel has just learned to maneuver a bit better, frankly, and good on him. I think he's doing the right thing. I don't think there's really a division in reform over this at all. I think it comes down to what personalities can say what and what personalities can't. I mean, even when you look at some of the stuff that Lee Anderson says, if it was coming out of Nigel's mouth, he would be in trouble.
Yes, because he did also speak up for Tommy Robinson, we should say, last week in the Daily Express, which was interesting. And maybe the Overton window will shift. But no, fascinating insight, of course, from Alex, who knows all of these men incredibly well. The Labour Party is literally combusting in front of our very eyes. So let me tell you the latest about what has just gone on. A second MP, this bloke is Oliver Ryan, the MP for Burnley, suspended over this grim chat in a WhatsApp group that was revealed by the Mail newspapers over the weekend, revealing, I think if you just put even anti-Semitism, racism and all of that to one side, revealing that actually the Labour Party has a complete disdain for the people of this country, which is the thing that I am most horrified by. But it gets worse. Rupert Lowe, Reform UK MP, has declared that Keir Starmer is a duplicitous guy and he should not be leading the country as a result of the voice coach scandal. And Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, when asked on the British Bashing Corporation, was unable to clearly deny that she had accused Mr. Starmer, of being unable to run a bath. Watch.
He's his own worst critic.
He would be, yeah, absolutely.
But a new book reports that you said he couldn't run a bath. Did you say that?
Well, I'm not, you know, there's a lot of things that were said in that book that I don't recognise, to be honest.
So
and
did you not say that?
And it's tittle tattle, so I don't recognise what was said in that book.
But that's not tittle tattle. That's what the woman who's now the Deputy Prime Minister is reported to have said about the now Prime Minister.
Sure, and there was lots of other things that people have said about me or anyone else, and no, I don't recognise ever saying that to anybody. But we all have frustrations when we're at work sometimes, and I'm sure people have been frustrated with me at work sometimes.
Wow, Alex Phillips. I mean, it truly is falling apart, right? From every angle at the moment. But what did you make of these WhatsApp messages? I mean, there is the one part of me that is like the pro-free speech guy and pro-privacy guy too, and sort of thinking it's quite grim and you should be able to have these discussions behind closed doors. But I'm sorry, when you're an MP and now a minister and you're actually talking about wanting your constituents to die because they are freezing to death in their homes and that's why they don't want to vote for you, it's a really horrid insight to what is the true nasty party.
So you've actually got this bang on. First of all, I don't want to live in a country where people lose their jobs, whether they're an MP or a receptionist or a doctor or anything, for some sort of, you know, joke they've had in a WhatsApp group. I don't care whether we're talking about, you know, a Labour MP, a Reform MP, anyone. If you've been joking in a private WhatsApp group, that's just nobody's business. People have got to get on with getting on. And if we live in a country where we start persecuting people for that, we're in trouble. Now, the problem is the Labour Party would do that to other people. The Labour Party are the anti-free speech party who put people in prison for social media. So they deserve to be drinking their own medicine, having it force-fed to them. So in that regard, good. I'm glad these people have been outed, but I don't want this to now set a precedent of this is the game we play. But what I would say is what it shows and what I keep feeling every time I see anybody from the Labour Party is how thick they are. How bloody incompetent and useless and low grade and classless they are. When you look at someone like Rupert Lowe, who is highly intelligent, do you think Rupert Lowe sits in WhatsApp groups going, ha, 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 I bet this person's that, I hope that person dies, ha, ha. No, he's an adult. And also he knows he's been chairman of a football club. He is now an MP. He's been an MEP. He knows that being part of WhatsApp groups with banter like this at some point is probably going to come and bite you in the backside. The problem with the Labour Party, including Angela Rayner, Wes Streeting said the same stupid things on X. These people have zero intellect. The class of politician we have now is so outrageously low grade. It's embarrassing. And when you look at that awful woman, Angela Rayner, and the way she talks and the big smirk on her face, of course she said that about Keir Starmer. Of course she has. But her saying someone else couldn't even run a bath, I mean, she is just utterly hopeless. It's embarrassing when you see these people who are essentially running our country in the highest positions of power. That's our Deputy Prime Minister. That absolute moron is our Deputy Prime Minister. This isn't classist. I'm a huge champion of the working class. We've got brilliant politicians who have come from the working classes who have been really high grade. You know, especially
look at Lee Anderson. Look at Lee Anderson.
But especially in the Labour Party, who have had a strong tradition of brilliant working class elected representatives. Love them or loathe them, there have been some excellent people who have been extremely bright, really fought their corner. This lot are just low-grade classroom bullies without any brain cells. And that's
you're so right.
They're thick. They're thick.
You're so right. I mean, remember Wes Streeting, who is now Health Secretary, was once advocating to push Jan Moir, the Daily Mail columnist, under a bus. And the thing about Andrew Gwynn is that he has always been a highly unpleasant character. I mean, a real Corbynista. And do you remember, Alex, this bizarre clash that he had with Boris Johnson on Sly News? Here's a reminder, if not.
We want managed immigration. We are leaving the European Union.
I'm not hearing an answer.
We are leaving the European Union.
Are you leaving the customs union?
We are leaving the European Union.
I asked him this last time.
Boris,
remember, I asked him this last time.
Boris, I'm sorry to say,
I'm so sorry. Sorry, go on.
Don't be a pillock.
Come on. You're leaving the customs union.
No, Boris.
You're not leaving the customs union.
Boris, can you please tell people,
Are you leaving the customs union?
Can you please tell the pensioners what is happening to their winter fuel allowance? How many of them are going to lose it?
I haven't heard. Well, that obviously is
10 million?
but that is
10 million?
That is
Okay,
to be.
Mr. Johnson, just
that
let
is
me
obviously.
I mean, Alex, number one, I feel so embarrassed that is a man who Keir Starmer thought was worthy of becoming a minister. The total irony that there he is going off at Boris Johnson and physically accosting him over the winter fuel allowance, which Labour scrapped the moment they were in government.
Yeah, but the other thing is, it's the style of the rhetoric as well, because I've noticed this is something that people on the left wing do. They can't seem to make arguments because they don't do any research. They don't have any valid points. They don't know how to sound reasonable or educated or learned. And so they have this thing where they just repeat things over and over again. They'll just say, are you going to hurt the pensioners? Are you going to hurt the pensioners? Are you going to, but we're going to be, I mean, it's not a form of debate, just talking over somebody and repeating some sort of ridiculous accusation. I mean, this is what I mean. If he became a health minister, what on earth was Sir Keir Starmer picking between? We have got, how many Labour MPs we got? 300 and something odd? A load of them. I can name about 10. What the hell are these other people like who are sitting on our green benches in some of the most privileged positions in the country? If those people become ministers, what's the rest of the rabble like, Dan?
Oh my God, I know. I shudder to think. And I mean, look, Douglas Murray made the good point that this guy's been hoisted by his own petard, because he pointed out, and I'd forgotten this, to be honest, Alex, but he pointed out some people may remember this wretched man, referring to Andrew Gwynn from the Scruton affair, back then, referring to Roger Scruton, of course, back then, bouncing off fabricated quotes from the New Statesman. Gwynn said, nobody holding those views has a place in modern democracy. Behold. And I think that is such a good point. Rupert Lowe, though, in this interview with the Daily Telegraph, is really gunning for Starmer. And he believes that the scandal specifically over the voice coach and the lockdown breaking is enough on its own to see the Prime Minister go. So let's just have a watch of this.
At the end of the day, we're not at the election. I mean, do I think Starmer will last his full term? Probably not. I mean, I think the way they're going, he may not be there. Yeah. And then God knows who they would appoint if he weren't there. I mean, I personally think having this voice coach over COVID, the guy should resign. I think it's quite extraordinary. Yeah. Not only did the voice coach not make any difference, but, what was she doing going there on, I gather it was on Christmas Eve. Yeah. Who knows what he was up to? I mean, the guy, in my view, is a duplicitous human being, and he shouldn't be leading the country. That's my opinion on Keir Starmer. Yeah.
And it's interesting, isn't it, Alex Phillips, that the whole mainstream media just has moved on from that story. Nothing to see here.
Oh, I tell you what's really interesting. Look, I'm a proper journalist like you are, Dan. We've come up through the ranks of journalism, trained as journalists, so we know the profession. I had Harry Cole, the political editor of The Sun, on my show the other day on Talk. And he did something which in journalist code spoke volumes. He said a bit like what Rupert Lowe has said there, something along the lines of, well, we don't even know why she was there on Christmas Eve of all days. And essentially in journalistic code was alluding to the fact this might be more like a sort of Neil Ferguson situation. Is it Neil Ferguson? Do you remember him?
Yes, the naughty scientist.
Yeah, and it's funny, I can't remember his exact turn of words, but Harry Cole very much used a sentence. And I said, are you suggesting something, Harry? And he leant back and said, oh, would I? I'm not. They know. I think the mainstream media knows something. I don't know, but I have a feeling that, it's a funny old time. What was he doing? Making a speech to the turkey on the dinner table? Why is a woman travelling up from Brighton on Christmas Eve to do voice coaching? Now, I think there's something else going on here. I don't know, but I think that if anyone was bold enough to dig into this, I think there's a suggestion that this was extracurricular activities of another form. Now, I don't know if that's true, but it's funny, isn't it? It looks weird. I mean, look, who paid for her as well? We don't even know whether it was taxpayers paying for her. Again, the timing's off, trying to suggest that this was, why, again, the mainstream media is so ridiculous. If something sounds ridiculous, a voice coach coming up on Christmas Eve, regardless of lockdown or not, that just doesn't pass muster, does it?
No, totally.
A voice coach on Christmas Eve. I mean, there's more to this.
And they've also refused to say what she exactly was doing because, of course, Alex, it wasn't the fact she was a voice coach that allowed her to be a key worker for Keir Starmer's big Brexit speech. She was a wider part of the team. Well, I'm sorry, what experience does she have? She's an actress. I mean, the whole thing stinks. And the fact that the mainstream media have just moved on from it, and it did annoy me a bit in that interview with Gordon Rayner in the Daily Telegraph too, you could just tell that wasn't really where he wanted to take things. There just doesn't seem to be a desire to cover the story. So I'm really grateful for people like Rupert Lowe who are going to keep hammering it, because even though the mainstream media might not be on this, the public are, and the public know that something's up. And by the way, Alex, we still don't know the truth about Keir Starmer's family, the shape of his family.
We do. Now, and he's got such a beautiful wife as well, for such an ugly.
Who's disappeared again? She's disappeared again. Do you remember when all of the pressure was on during the election campaign? All of a sudden she was there and they posed at Taylor Swift together and she was wearing all of Lord Ali's clothes and it was like, everything's fine, nothing to see here, don't worry, happy families, happy families, happy families. She's totally disappeared again. Now, look, again, I am prepared to have the debate, Alex. Does the public have any right to know about the Prime Minister's private life? I'm happy to have that debate. But given the sanctimony from which the Labour Party operated in opposition, where nothing in Boris Johnson's personal life was off limits, be it the affair with Jennifer Arcuri or the fight with Carrie Johnson or who was paying for the wallpaper, I'm sorry, they don't get the right to all of a sudden change the rules.
Yeah, it's worth remembering ourselves. Yeah, but at the end of the day, though, the Labour Party were bandwagoning because the people who are trying to take out Boris Johnson with all the made-up rubbish about gold wallpaper was actually the Conservative Party themselves, which is, again, harking back to why we must never reach out to them. They are just despicable. But look, I agree with you. I'm sure if we wanted every single Prime Minister to be, a perfect choir boy and then a brilliant father and has never put a foot wrong, we might not get amazing leaders that way. Usually for someone to be an amazing leader, they're not always a great human being. I hate to say that, but it's true. But you are right. The thing is about the Labour Party and the left in general is that their favourite tool to use is the big sort of morality mallet, where they go around boshing other people over their head for not being pure as the driven snow. It is, it's that self-righteousness that they just constantly try and shower themselves in moral rectitude when frankly they have none. So in that regard, I do hope that people stay hot on this topic. I think there must be a funny stitch up at the moment between newspapers and Number 10. We know that Keir Starmer's not the one running the country. We know Morgan McSweeney is, but there seems to be a funny stitch up because the newspapers have had stuff for a while and they're not printing it. Now, I don't know whether this is because if you do that, we're going to, bring out something with the regulator, or we're going to not allow you to do X, Y, and Z, whether there's a sort of degree of threat coming back from Number 10, or whether, and I do think that this might be the case, they kind of think, well, the country's been such a mess. If we were to get rid of Sir Keir Starmer, if we were to sort of push him with a headline on the front page and try and topple him, does that mean bloody Angela Rayner's the Prime Minister? There might even be a sense of sort of civic duty in all of this.
Because that's my prediction, Alex. Everyone talks about Wes Streeting or Rachel Reeves. I don't buy that. I genuinely believe that when Keir Starmer is deposed, he will be deposed by the left of the Labour Party and Angela Rayner will become Prime Minister. It's a terrifying prediction, but honestly, I stand by it. Breaking right now. The farmers have taken over Westminster and Whitehall, and God, it is a beautiful sight. Lots of folk gathering. I'm going to show you in just a moment this extraordinary clash between Nigel Farage and Jacob Rees-Mogg. But first, Katie Hopkins, fresh off the left mob trying to cancel her for an event in London at the weekend, was getting quite emotional, actually. Watch.
Hope this isn't going to be a bit of a Tiananmen Square moment. Look at that. Stop killing the people who feed you. What an amazing moment. Thank you. Good luck. Thanks so much. Let's get you these people so you can see them. Well done, Kanan. Well done. Well done, lads. Oh, these are the real people. You don't need politicians. You need farmers. Well done. Woohoo! Well done. Well done, lads. Yeah! Come on, Britain! Well done. Oh my even goodness, I think I might wet myself. Would you please? They brought the tanks!
And it actually became just a little bit too much for Katie at one point, who was feeling so patriotic about these incredible scenes.
Not allowed to use fertiliser when they're not allowed to do what they want with their land anymore because Miliband says it might kill the planet. I'm just trying to give you a sense of how long this goes for. Can you see? And these guys have been up at 3 in the morning driving someone from Hull. I mean, all of their fuel costs as well at a time when they haven't got cash. And it's very emotional. It's very emotional, especially for me. You know, not to make it about me, but big men in big tractors being big patriots. It's enough to set me off. This one brilliantly has a sign that says Willie in its front windscreen. Oh, hold on, I'm trying to find it for the comedy factor for you guys. There it is. Sorry.
Mara.
Oh, bless you. Thanks for taking the time to put the effort in to be here. We appreciate you. Thank you. And that's really what I'm trying to do. Just go around cuddling people saying, thank you for doing this. Oh, golly. It's more than my heart can stand, but this is such a proud day. This is what makes me proud to be British.
Oh, I just love that. I absolutely love that. And look, Katie Hopkins is, I believe, an incredible force. She goes to these events completely on her own, doing her own social media, knowing that she is under serious threat. Because when she was being interviewed at the weekend at a private venue in East London, the hard left tried to cancel her to such an extent that they went to the local council, they threatened the venue with cancellation, they called up the workers who were attending the event and said, if you go and you work at this event, you're a racist. And then when all of that failed, they turned up outside to try and threaten the people who were there to listen to Katie's life story. Watch. And Adam Brooks was the one who actually put that up on his social media. He attended the event, Alex Phillips. And this was for Brogan Garrett Smith's incredible podcast, Getting There. I've featured on it as a guest. So has Tommy Robinson. But Brogan herself plays a completely straight back. She's just interested in people, fascinated in their life stories. I wasn't able to attend the event myself, but I'm told that it was incredibly emotional. There were lots of tears. And how do you feel about Katie Hopkins, Alex? Because I feel like even though there was this protest in London, there is a huge reevaluation, because when I am encountering people in my day-to-day life, virtually without fail, they will say to me, oh, Dan, do you know Katie Hopkins? I think she's amazing.
Yeah, a couple of things. So first of all, I think Katie seems to have the same affliction I have, which is crying at tractors. I literally have this problem. Every Christmas, when I'm in Wiltshire with my other half, we go and watch the tractor pull, which is when they cover themselves in Christmas lights and they go through the town centre. And I always cry. I also cry at military aircraft. I don't know what's wrong with me. There's something about sort of men doing brave things that just, it really sort of pulls at my heartstrings. And I saw that that's what she's got. She's got crying at tractors as well. One thing that's interesting, right? And Katie Hopkins, a bit like Tommy Robinson, and various other people. If you look stateside, I'd say a bit like Candace Owens and others like that. Something has happened, which is they dared to put their head above the parapet and say things first. As a result, they were cancelled, bullied, struck off, lost their livelihoods. And so they had to end up going back to the thing that sort of got them notoriety in the first place and have to stay relevant and have to maintain an income. And so they've doubled down. And I think in a strange way, it's had the effect of, radicalizing people to some degree. And I think that Katie Hopkins has in times past been, as a result of this, being probably a bit too strident or a bit too one-dimensional, perhaps, not nuanced enough. But that's because she was painted as the bad guy, because she was characterized as that. And so it's almost like, when you do that to somebody, they end up sort of almost becoming that. Is she a bad person? Absolutely not. Do you know what's interesting? I remember years ago now, Katie Hopkins making a documentary on white farmers in South Africa. Genuinely, I remember this because I think there was some event at the European Parliament, or I can't remember. It was going back a long time ago, but she went over to South Africa and spoke about what was happening to white farmers. And look at what is happening to white farmers. That is now echoing about in the chambers of social media. So these people are very important. Those who do dare to put something on an agenda, those who do dare to raise the alarm first, need to be given credit where credit's due. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get everything right, but this ridiculous puritanical world we live in, which has been designed by the West to bully, to suppress, it's fascism essentially. You see those people there from the Socialist Workers' Party with their sort of cut and copy placards. Those are the very people who would have been active members of the Nazi Party. Those are the dangerous ones, the people who are scared of anybody doing anything other than this small, prescript little way of how we should live, forced ideology. They are the very people who, frankly, are the fascists, are the dangerous people. Usually, actually, if you dig into them, they're also the homophobes and the racists because they are bullies.
Totally. And look, the thing about Katie Hopkins, right? And I've known Katie for many, many years, and I have huge respect for her. I've always had huge respect for her, and I've always known her personally. We've also had run-ins, right? Like, we've had run-ins. We had run-ins when I was at GB News. We had run-ins before that. But I have so much respect for her because, and I'll tell you why, they took everything from her, Alex. Everything from her. I mean, she owns nothing. She is unable to be public about even at her own children's school, because they literally tried to destroy this woman. And if you go back and you look at what they cancelled her for, it is speech that is now mainstream. And so it was completely wrong. Everyone was completely wrong to turn. I obviously know what it's like when all of those mainstream organizations, because it was exactly the same for her as it was for me, that she had the Daily Mail, the Sun and LBC all pulled the plug. I had the Mail and GB News all pulled the plug. So we know what happens. The great thing is now, though, is that we've had all of these years to say, actually, what was she really wrong on? Do you see what I mean? And look, I think it's possible to say that there are particular things you disagree with. Of course there are. Like, so for example, I'll put it out here right now. I don't like the way that Katie Hopkins jokes about the death of Derek Draper. Loads of people do. Loads of people find it hilarious, right? But I know Kate Garraway, and Kate Garraway is a good woman. And actually, Kate Garraway is very politically sound. I think people would be very surprised to know where Kate Garraway stands on the political spectrum, Alex, because she's much more aligned to where we are at than where, say, one of the typical lefties like Susanna Reid is at. But I don't want to cancel Katie Hopkins for making a joke that I just personally don't find funny.
Oh, do you remember how beloved people like Frankie Boyle were to the left wing until all of a sudden they realised when he was sort of sticking his boot into conservatives? It's all very funny. When you look at a lot of the comedians now, they're all blimmin' lefties, aren't they? and they can make whatever joke they want, because it's almost understood that if you're attacking someone for being white, if you're attacking somebody for being right wing, that's allowed. There's no such thing as a white victim. But this is dangerous. And I go back, what you said was very important. It's sort of like what I said, which is when people stick their head above the parapet and they get ransacked, they end up with no choice. It's almost like, we've made your bed, you've got to lie in it. Now you've got to double down and be that thing. You've got to be the monster we're all saying that you are in order to stay relevant. That's the only the thing you get to furrow now. And so there are some people who sort of end up handling that badly. They sometimes lose a bit of nuance. But Katie Hopkins has been raising a lot of issues before anybody else. I say again, the white farmers. And it disgusts me that the mainstream media aren't talking about that. You've got South African leaders shouting at rallies full of thousands and thousands of people, shoot the farmer, kill the farmer, cut the throats of the women and the children. They always go after women and children, don't they? You've got a mad dictator who is ransacking the farmland, taking it off white people. There will be, it's been going on for a long time, the brutal murder. And normally when, these black activists go and murder white farmers, they are not just going in there and shooting them, they're tying them up, they're raping the women, they're mutilating them, they're torturing them. It's bestial. And we aren't allowed to talk about these things because the victim's white. And actually, I'm beginning to realize around the world, the most persecuted people internationally at the moment are probably white farmers in South Africa and Christians. But these people aren't allowed to be victims. Oh no, but it's dangerous when people aren't calling this stuff out and seeing it for what it is. We're in big trouble, and it makes all of us unsafe fundamentally.
Indeed, and if you look at the South Africa issue, Alex, specifically, Katie was well ahead of the curve. Of course, she was accused of being a horrible racist, right? That's how people deal with an issue like that. But look now at the Trump administration refusing to recognize South Africa because of that issue. So again, I would say it was one example where Katie was ahead of her time. Alex, I do want to ask you about the farmers' protest quickly, though, because there was a fascinating exchange today on GB News between two of its presenters, Nigel Farage versus Jacob Rees-Mogg, both trying to claim that their respective parties would be the voice of farmers. I thought it was really interesting. I'm fascinated to know what you think. So let's have a little look.
Because we've done that.
I've been saying it for years.
But
I wasn't in a position to do it. But you haven't been in a position to do it either. We are both voices crying in the wilderness.
Well, Jacob, my wilderness may not be quite what it was. We're going to win the next general election, and we will abolish inheritance tax. End of.
That's the manifesto commitment.
End of.
Jacob, is this the start of that Reform Conservative pact?
Wow, interesting, isn't it, Alex? Because that's the problem the Conservative Party have. Sure, we can sit here and say Jacob Rees-Mogg, great guy, really supportive of the farmers, but it's Nigel who can actually say, no, inheritance tax is gone. There's no discussion about this. It's a very, very clear policy. Oh, and by the way, you didn't do it when you were in government for 14 years.
I feel sorry for Jacob. Well, no, actually, I don't feel sorry for Jacob Rees-Mogg. He's a multi-millionaire in a beautiful house in Somerset and is an absolute legend and largely beloved, apart from by weird leftists. The thing is, to his credit and also his discredit, Jacob Rees-Mogg is so loyal to the Conservative Party. He's not even elected as an MP anymore. He lost his seat in North Somerset. And he'd be so welcomed. Can you imagine him in Reform? Because that is his political ideology. That's where he should be. He should have been in the Brexit Party. He should have been in UKIP. And so on one hand, there's something beautifully old-fashioned and loyal about his dedication to the Conservative Party, even though it's a sinking ship, even though he's lost his seat. But what's so sad is he'd be far more politically useful if he had defected and put ideology above party. And frankly, in politics, it needs to be that way. It should be politics before party. I don't know what Jacob Rees-Mogg is going to do, whether he might ever have his arm twisted to stand for Reform. I doubt it. But those two have always gotten along very well. They've always gotten along very well. When I worked for Leave Means Leave I worked with both of them, and then of course they're both at GB News. But you know, behind it all, they get along incredibly well. And so when people do talk about, well, actually, should the Conservative Party and Reform unite? No, good Conservatives should stay Conservative and actually defect to Reform, offer their services, and then Reform should actually take people on a case-by-case basis if they're deemed good enough, if they're deemed like, you know, they're worth it, and you know, have made a sacrifice really.
Very well put, Alex Phillips. But don't go anywhere, because in just 1 minute, I want to get Alex Phillips's reaction to these incredible scenes at the Super Bowl last night, where it feels like there was a cultural change happening in front of our very eyes. Taylor Swift booed, Donald Trump cheered. Really interesting. I'll show you both moments. But first, this episode is sponsored by Manscaped, the brand trusted by over 11 million men worldwide for their face and body trimmers, hygiene essentials, and premium boxers. If so many men swear by them, including me, you can bet your Valentine will too. And guys, this is your last chance for Valentine's Day, okay? It's Friday, so be very scared if you haven't sorted your present yet. And this year, there is an opportunity to raise the bar, because I'm sure you've watched your man try for that rom-com leading man charm only to land in scruffy sidekick territory. Not this year. We're treating them to the VIP experience. Meet the Handyman Rocket Man Special Edition from Manscaped, a sleek, compact face grooming essential that guarantees your partner's face is on track for heartthrob status all year long. Now available in the Special Edition Rocket Man colorway featuring gold and black. But just a quick word of advice. There are limited quantities available in this color, so you'll need to act fast, and you can use the code OUTSPOKEN, by the way, for 20% off your entire order and free international shipping at manscaped.com. But let me tell you what's incredible about the Handyman. It's cordless and designed for convenience. It easily fits in a bathroom drawer or slips into an overnight or gym bag for easy grooming on the go. It's also perfect for those last-second touch-ups when your reservation is in 15 minutes and he's looking a bit more lost in the woods than leading man in a love story. Engineered with a unique dual blade system, it features both a standard foil shaver and a long hair trimming blade to handle up to 3 days of beard growth. And it's equipped with skin-safe technology designed to reduce nicks and cuts for the perfect clean shave. And after all, who wants a sharp reminder of their grooming session, right, on a romantic evening out? So whether your guy is a grooming newbie or a seasoned pro, the Handyman in this special edition color is the perfect upgrade, just in time for you to make this Valentine's Day extra special. Manscaped has a 30-day money back guarantee though, so it's totally risk-free. And as I say, you can use the code OUTSPOKEN and get 20% off your entire order and free international shipping at checkout. That's manscaped.com, using the code OUTSPOKEN for free shipping and a whopping 20% discount on your entire order. But now, back to the show. It was one of those moments where you could see culture changing in front of your very eyes. In fact, I could see woke ending altogether. The Super Bowl last night, the biggest event in the American calendar. And it was the end of an era in so many ways, because Taylor Swift's position as the queen of woke, the Kamala Harris supporting celebrity who had turned her back on the country fans who made her famous in the first place. Well, in just 12 seconds, she was left mortified by booing. And Taylor couldn't really understand what was going on. She literally asked, "What is going on?" Because this is the problem with the elites. They don't understand that there has been a fundamental change in our culture. As Brett Cooper said recently, celebrity is over. Because contrast that with the reaction received by Donald Trump, who last night became the first ever sitting president to attend the Super Bowl.
Rulers fight for the rain.
And I actually wrote about this after I saw it last night. The official end of woke celebrity culture. Just after Donald Trump receives rapturous applause at the Super Bowl, Taylor Swift is roundly and loudly booed. These stars don't know what hit him. And Cat Turd, which is that big X account really promoted by Elon Musk, agreed, simply saying woke is over. Now, Alex Phillips, I've had some people try and tell me, oh, Dan, this was just because Taylor Swift's bloke was playing in the other team and it was all football related. But the thing is, even say that was true, sometimes it's just a moment, isn't it, that is picked up in the culture. And this just felt really significant to me.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is Taylor Swift, of course, comes from a country music background, country music largely associated with republicanism. And of course, what the powers that be did in the run-up to the Harris-Trump campaign was what they do every single time and dictates that every single celebrity must turn around and support the Democrat candidate, say that Donald Trump is despicable. If they don't, they risk being cancelled. And so for commercial reasons, you have all of these people lining up in Hollywood, in the music industry, in soaps, all turning around going, I'm left-wing and I'm proud, I like trans, I like this. Their agents tell them to do it. The newspapers tell them they have to do it because actually if they don't, it means a loss of revenue for them. So in some respects, I don't necessarily blame them, although I do wish people had more spine and backbone, particularly when they're in positions of influence and have billions in the bank that they can afford to say what they believe in. But Taylor Swift came out ahead of the last election and backed Kamala. And so the boos about that, yes, they blimmin' well are about that. I don't think those people really care about whether she's got this fake boyfriend playing for one team or the other. And you're right, woke is over. The very first domino to fall, of course, was Brexit. We came first in the United Kingdom. That was the very big first
we started this, absolutely.
We did. We started the revolution. People forget that. Unfortunately, we seem to be the last ones to complete it because we've now got back to a communist government. But we started that revolution and it has changed. And actually, I can't wait for that to hit the UK when all of these smug celebrities on Last Leg and on The One Show or whatever it may be, the Chris Martins of this world, when all these woke celebrities suddenly realise that the new rock and roll is not mutilating children. The new rock and roll is not allowing men from other countries to come in and rape our women. The new rock and roll is sensible right-wing policies. That's where the people are at. And actually, the left have been extremely good at using bullying, using things like advertising bans, stop funding hate and all of these movements. They've been very good at monetizing the left wing, making it profitable to be left wing. So if you're a movie star, if you're a whatever it is, you have to be left wing or, you're not going to fill up your bank account. I'm really looking forward to that flipping. And I hope this is the beginning of that. And when people start being chucked in prison for having given their kids puberty blockers, just you wait. All of these people who turned around and said they were on the side of trans rights and on the side of open borders are going to never, ever confess to it. But do you know what? The public aren't stupid. They've kept the receipts.
They have. I mean, Alex, honestly, did you see, I'm just trying to find it now, actually, because did you see Cynthia Nixon? Right, let me show you this. So she protested in New York the other day. Now, Cynthia Nixon, right, Sex and the City, lesbian woman. But she, in this totally crazed speech, revealed that her daughter is trans, her sister's daughter is trans, her best friend's kid is trans, and her kid's best friend is trans. And we wonder why ordinary folk are being turned off by the celebrity class.
Yeah, there are just a bunch of child abusers. What is so alarming when you listen to the sort of roll call of everyone who seems to have been trans in her social group and in her family, how many of them are girls? Frankly speaking, gender dysphoria is a condition, but it affects like 0.03% of the population maximum. 75% of those afflicted with this genuine psychological condition are men. So when you've got a load of girls who are now coming out as trans, this is essentially child abuse. These girls have been mentally tortured by society, by people in their surroundings to actually believe that they'd rather be boys and to go as far as having surgical interventions and medical interventions, which is a form of child abuse, frankly speaking. And the people who are mentally ill are the people who are forcing this on kids and can't see any different. You're not going to get the Cynthia Nixons of this world ever turning around and changing their mind on trans rights, because that means they're going to have to admit what they themselves have done. I don't know if you ever watched the remake thing of Sex and the City. Is it called Just Like That? Because I used to really like Sex and the City. It's part of my sort of, my youth. I watched it and it just became almost like a horror watch, like a doom watch. It was so disgusting in everyone being trans, everything being woke. Oh my God, it was so horrible that actually it was kind of addictive to just see how bad it could get. But, peak wokedom, like I said, I think you're right, Dan. I think it is over. What I'm looking forward to is I'm now actually looking forward to the moment where heads roll, because they actually need to. That might sound sort of vengeful and unpleasant, but they need to, because we need to never let this happen again. Because when it comes to the protection of women, girls, children, kids having surgeries, puberty blockers, young girls being sexually harassed, the whole women's sexual liberty movement, the whole Kardashian thing has led to the pornification of society. That's had a huge impact in why so many girls are saying, I don't want to be a girl anymore. We need to actually have conversations. And unfortunately, people do need to be punished for this. People in positions of safeguarding ought to be prosecuted or fired. And when it comes to the celebs, actually, they do need to be defunded and deplatformed, because they've been a huge part of pushing these narratives for their own economic ends. And that, for me, is just evil.
Exactly. Sing your songs, act in your movies, that's fine. Stop forcing your sick views down our throats, especially, by the way, the people who don't believe in it. And actually, Alex, maybe this will be the one area we disagree on today. So I've got to end on it, because, I'm pretty much on the line now of like free speech absolutism when it comes to X and everything. And the big celebrity battle of the week has been about Kanye West and his increasingly deranged posts on X. And look, we don't even need to go into the posts, right? Because I think all of us are going to agree the posts are horrendous. Who knows what he's doing? Who knows if it's performance art? Who knows if he's literally having a breakdown because he's off his antipsychotic medication? We don't know what the tweet's about, but I think we can all agree they're awful. But this is where I completely find myself thinking, Piers Morgan, what are you doing? Because you host a show called Uncensored, but he posted on X, hey, Elon Musk, how much more disgustingly hateful, racist, anti-Semitic, violence-inducing stuff from Kanye are you going to allow him to spew on your platform to his 32 million followers? And Nick Sauter, a really sound guy, Trump-supporting account, wrote, the man with a show called Uncensored is complaining there isn't enough censorship on X. LMAO, we know what that means. The irony is truly lost on you. And I have to say, this is where I just find... The idea of free speech, people then saying, oh, you've got to boot off Kanye West. Surely just block him. I mean, as it turns out, Alex, he has now quit X himself. But I just personally don't agree with immediately leaping on and saying, let's ban him, because there are repercussions as soon as you start banning people. It's like, why does Elon Musk get to decide who has free speech or not, etc., etc.? But do you disagree?
No, I don't at all. I mean, I actually found Kanye's rants utterly hilarious. Not because I find the content hilarious, it was vile. But this is clearly a man who's lost his marbles. He's gone wrong. He's gone deranged. I'm quite a perverse, cynical person. And every year, it's a habit from journalist days. When times are quiet in newsrooms, journalists work on obits. They start, especially in broadcasting, they get all the footage out of the libraries. They used to, it's kind of different now, everything's digitized. But back in the day, you'd have to go into a library and get out a cassette and put it into the system. And so you'd have to try and at the start of every year, at some point, you'd have a meeting sort of going, okay, what tapes do we need to get out of the library? Who might we lose in 2024 or 2025 or whatever? And so it's still a kind of sort of dark tradition where, some of my friends and I will sort of say, who do we think are we going to lose this year? And with that sort of mad unraveling of Kanye West, it's like, you're nudging up for entry on my list, my friend. I'm kind of worried for him. Not that I like him, but he's clearly not a well man. But should he be allowed to post? Yeah. I mean, the thing is, everyone can see it for what it is. I don't think there are people reading those mad posts on X going, well, now you've put it like that. I agree with you. Let me come along and join you in your hatred. The great thing about freedom of speech is you can see exactly what it says on a tin. You can see what people are, you can see what they stand for, but you can also see their level of mental health. And I think actually anyone discerning is looking at that, Kanye West's Twitter and going, actually, does he mean what he's saying? Probably not. He's just ill.
Yeah, exactly. And let's not jump immediately to censorship because all of the repercussions that come with it. Alex Phillips, you were brilliant. By the way, so many comments rolling in about your documentary. Deborah Greening wrote, Alex, I watched it and thought it was brilliant. I have now started telling my friends to watch it ASAP. John wrote, so it's not just women who are watching this. John wrote, what a sad country we live in when women cannot feel safe. What an unacceptable state of affairs. Karen messaged me, I bloody love Alex Phillips. I subscribe to her Substack and never miss her afternoon show when she was on GB News. I really hope she stands for reform in the future. She is exactly the type and standard of person we need in Parliament. So, Alex, just remind everyone where they can watch the documentary.
Right, yeah, so basically the New Culture Forum is the name of the think tank I made this documentary with. You can follow them on X. I recommend you do. They do amazing work. You can follow me on X at That Alex Woman. There's links to it there. But also if you just go on YouTube and look up New Culture Forum and find their videos, and it should be there. And, I'm not saying this because I want to get all the follows and because I want to become a, little celebrity or something. But I do think we did such important research here. And anyone who's looked at this documentary and thought this is important and people need to know about this, please send it to more people, because the more the country can talk about the fact that women are now facing unprecedented levels of rape and sexual harassment because of mass immigration, unless we all talk about this, unless we are compelled to do something, unless the country wakes up to what is going on, the situation won't change, and it's too dangerous. I will not let the daughters of this country be sacrificed. So it is important. Please watch it. If you agree, I can't see why anyone would disagree because I've got all the data and information there. If you think this is an important campaign, then share it. Please, please just get the message far and wide, because this needs to stop, and it needs to stop now.
Absolutely. And the New Culture Forum are great anyway. You'll love the rest of their content, and it's right up there at the top of their YouTube page. Alex Phillips, I love you. Thank you so much. We will speak next week.
Oh, cheers, Dan.
And thank you for all of your feedback. Lots on Alex today, but you're also messaging about this idea of Zia Yusuf and whether he's right to suggest jailing Boris Johnson and Matt Hancock. LBC, not the LBC, one of you as LBC, writes, oh yes, Johnson and Hancock both need to be prosecuted, and to take care too. Maybe that one I can get on board with. It's Your Boy writes, what they are trying to do is stopping Boris from coming back. Blazed AF Gaming writes, as someone who lost his granddad in a care home during COVID, I'd never like to see Boris or Conservatives ever in power, and Labour have proved they're no longer working class and a disgrace. And Ugly Boy writes, sorry, but Boris deserves everything he gets. He lied to us, he fleeced us, and he never represented us in the first place. He was and is all about himself. So a real divided opinion on that. Union Jackass time now. The 3 nominees today. Andrew Gwynn for his revolting views on his constituents in the leaked WhatsApp messages, Taylor Swift being booed at the Superbowl because of her woke ideology, and the protesters trying to silence Katie Hopkins. The results, Taylor Swift with 14% of your vote, Katie Hopkins protesters with 30% of your vote, but 56% of you make Andrew Gwynn the true face of the Labour Party, today's Union Jackass. And Greatest Britain winner today, a guy who I know many of you love. Congratulations to Maya Tusi of Tusi TV. It was such an honour to be at his engagement party on Saturday night. And he is celebrating his forthcoming wedding with the lovely Danielle. So congratulations to Maya Tusi. Today's Greatest Britain, a very, very good man and a brave independent journalist. Now, coming up in the Uncancelled After Show on Substack, whoa, the Invictus Games at the weekend. Crazy stuff. honestly, if you haven't seen what went on, you are going to want to be watching with me and Brittany of the Royal News Network for all the best coverage that you will not get from the mainstream media. So what we do at this stage, of course, is come off YouTube and Rumble. We move to Substack. www.outspoken.live is the address. Please do subscribe. And I am back tomorrow at 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. The new UKIP leader, Nick Tanconi, with us for his first interview before taking that job on permanently. Hit subscribe if you're watching on YouTube and Rumble, and if you turn on the notification bell, then you'll be alerted to our new episodes. I promise to keep fighting for you, and I hope to see you on the after show in just a couple of moments.